friends. Please help me welcome up Brian Jaten.
Thanks, Chris. What was I supposed to say? He always does that to me. No, Chris asked me earlier if I'd come up and share some of my experience with mentorship. But I have to tell you just a brief 60-second background about myself. The gentleman here with the hat, Cleve, is it? I was you, man. I wore my hat lower than you got it right now, and you couldn't have drugged me to one of these meetings. I had found some level of success financially in my life, but it was very much related to titles. I was a corporate kind of guy. And I climbed the ladder everywhere I went. I'd moved up in the company, and I felt like I had all this success because they gave me these really fancy titles in different places that I worked. And I started bumping into certain things in my life. I bumped into some challenges. And every time I bumped into a challenge, I had a system on how to get through it. And I don't teach this because you don't want to do what I did. But it looked something like this. I just hold my breath. Because I knew that time eventually would go by, and whatever was challenging me, it would just kind of dissipate and go away. That was my system. Okay, you're only laughing because you do it too, right? But that's how I got through life. I was excited, and I was enthusiastic, and I was strong, and then challenge would come, or a trial would come, and I'd hold my breath until it went away, and then I'd keep moving on. But what it looked like, if you could imagine a rabbit bouncing up and down inside of a little small tunnel and hitting his head every time he jumped. That's what my life looked like. Good bump down, good bump. I was banging my head against the ceiling. And I thought I had this disease that was really, really plaguing me, and it was the fact that I thought I knew enough to do everything I needed to do in life. And I went through something really traumatic in my life. Chris says that oftentimes these beliefs are created or they're stimulated by trauma. Well, I had something pretty significant happen in my life, and I decided that I was tired of bumping my head. And I reached out for the first time in my life. I kind of swallowed my pride, got rid of my ego, and I decided to reach out to a mentor. And that was the hardest phone call I ever made. Because when you reach out to a mentor, you're admitting to yourself that you don't know everything you think you should know, and you're not going to get to where you want to be with your current skill set or your current learning. So I made a phone call to a mentor, and I had no idea what to expect, but I went and hid in the corner of an office, and I put my head down on the desk, and I was talking on my cell phone, and I was down like this talking, and the mentor said, well, I'm not sure if I want to work with you. And I was like, I'm willing to pay you. What do you mean you're not willing to work with me? I said, well, I only work with certain kinds of people. I need to understand why you want mentorship. This is an interesting question. I'll kind of pose that question to you. How many of you have ever asked somebody for advice, but you knew you were not going to follow it? Or how many of you have ever asked somebody for advice, and you convinced them you were going to follow the advice, but your pattern in life was you were not going to follow it? You ever done that? That was me. I thought I was putting on a good show for myself. And then this mentor, who was very wise, said one thing to me. They said, why? Why do you want to come to me, and what do you hope to gain? Now, when I say I'm a lot like you, what you see here is this incredibly emotional guy today. But back then, I was hard-headed. I mean, I didn't know what tear ducts were. I didn't understand emotion. I thought those were things you just got in the way of production. Like, I was not emotional. And this person asked, what do you hope to gain? And I absolutely, in that moment, had the pivotal moment in my entire life. I broke into tears. I sobbed, and I couldn't control myself. And there's not a person in this room that's ever seen me this emotional, because I'm taking you back to where I was. The words came out of my mouth, and I couldn't believe it. The thing that I wanted out of mentorship is I wanted to love myself. That's all I wanted. That's all that came out. I knew how to treat other people well, but I wasn't treating myself well. And that's what I wanted in life most. And at that moment, I realized that I didn't have the skills, I didn't have the strength or the knowledge of how to do that. I thought I knew how to do it, and as you ask yourself that question, you might think, that's silly, but it wasn't silly to me, it was very real. everything in my life from that point forward changed. It literally changed. How many of you got an email from me today? Okay. I made a comment in there. I made a comment in that email today that I wrote that from a very personal space. I made a comment that losers think that success and trials cannot coexist. Winners don't see the separation. It's just life. Chris asks me all the time in public, he says, Ryan, how much money are you going to make this year? Or he says, how are things going for you? You know, the answer, I always tell him, I'm going to make all of it. He said, how many hours are you working? I said, all of them. It doesn't mean I haven't had trials. It doesn't mean I haven't had things that, you know, made me learn. But I got to tell you, in that email today, I made a comment, and I want you to think about this. I live a life right now of literal, perpetual success. What does it mean? It means it happens over and over and over again. Pretty soon there becomes this momentum in life to where success just continues to roll. And I'm a very analytical business guy. I'm a numbers guy. I like statistics. I like to know how things work. You know, if they say that an engineer, if you ask him what time it is, he tells you how to build a watch. I'm kind of that guy, right? But I'm going to tell you that my life changed when I learned how to love myself. And that was the moment that my business changed. That was the moment that my relationships changed. But most importantly, that's the time that my relationship with myself changed. And I've been through this mentor program with Chris. I'm now one of his facilitators. And I can tell you right now that the successes that I've felt, the successes that I've experienced over the last 2 or 3 years since I've been associated with Chris and his group outweigh and outshine everything I've ever done in my life. And it's not because Chris writes me these gigantic checks. We get to get up on stage every once in a while and hold up these enormous checks and brag about how much money we make. And we get to drive things and go places and do things. And I got to tell you, I've already gotten everything that I came here to get just by going through that mentorship. Because my life frickin' rocks. It is just an absolute great place to be. And for those of you who know me well, this is recorded, right? I've never been this emotional, but I've never had to explain to somebody where it came from and how it got there. When you see me at convention or you see me on teleconferences or on videos talking about Strongbrook and talking about how to build a business, and you see me, you know, trying to explain to people the successes that my family and I have enjoyed through Strongbrook, just know that this private group right here, you know the real secret. When people come up to me and say, hey, will you teach me what you did to build a team in 10 different states of 2,000 people that pay you? Will you teach me what you did? In my mind, I'm going, you don't want to know. You're not going to follow it. You got some work to do. Because if I teach you what I know, like Chris said, it's just a new vehicle for you to demonstrate failure in your life. You got to go back and reprogram some things. You got to go back and fix some things before you're ever going to get where you want to be. Now, there's also a group of people in here that their life rocks too. I'm not trying to cast a blanket over everybody that says that everybody's in this different place. This mentorship is for people that are successful. It's for people that are struggling. It's for people that want to create or continue this trajectory of life to where they can feel this perpetual motion of success. And I hope this meant something to you. I hope it resonates with you. And Chris, I appreciate you giving me this chance to share. And we'll talk later about you making me cry in public. But